tell us a little bit about Brendan.
Okay. Brendan was the oldest of my three boys, firstborn, and he was just full of energy, full of life. He had a great smile. He had this absolutely incredibly infectious laugh. And one of his friends said she found the perfect word, that he was incandescent, that he lit up a room when he walked in the room. And, he was pretty much like every kid. He played sports. He was a lacrosse goalie. He was in the National Honor Society. He did community service. He had wonderful friends. They were all always hanging out here. We were very close. He told me everything, more than I wanted to know sometimes. And he went away to college. He went to University of Richmond, which was his first choice. And again, he joined a fraternity. He had wonderful friends. We knew them all. He's not here.
When did it start?
It's hard to say. He was prescribed prescription opiates for a surgery that he had, but I remember taking them away after a few days. And he had another tonsillectomy that they prescribed them also. And again, though, there was nothing in his behavior that, we thought was problematic. And I guess people always ask, were there signs? And there were incidences. And when you look at them back, look back at them now, it makes perfect sense, a lot of the things that happened, but isolated they didn't. We didn't find out about it until he was starting his second semester senior year. And he came home very, very high from having lunch with his grandmother. And after a long time, he admitted that he had a little pill problem. And he didn't share with us how big the problem was, and we underestimated it, not really having a lot of knowledge about it. And we found out, after the fact that at that point, I believe he had been using heroin for at least a year, and he had been using pills for 2 years before that. So probably about 4 years before he passed away, and we had no idea.
Did he ever seek treatment?
When he went back to school, we made a decision. He had 1 semester left. We figured, it was going to be now or never. And again, we underestimated it, and he didn't share with us how bad it was. So we sent him back, and I found an addiction specialist down at school, and he was seeing him twice a week. He told his roommates they were drug testing him. His brother was at the same college. He started playing lacrosse again at like the highest competitive club level. He was their only goalie, and they had the most successful season. And he graduated, and during that time, there were a few things, but we thought he was okay, and we found out after graduation that he had been using during that time. He didn't use every day. He didn't inject, and he was functional. That's what people don't realize, is that you can be really functional while you're using these drugs. And when he came home, his brother found some evidence of heroin in his closet, and I was just shocked. And I still don't think, though, that we really thought he was a heroin addict at that point, because the thought of heroin in Allendale, it just didn't add up. And again, we had him seeing a specialist, and he was going to AA meetings. He had a great sponsor. He was working the 12 steps, going to meetings all the time. And he started doing a little work for a neighbor and some construction and some different things, and he still wound up fooling everyone. You become masters of deceit, and very, 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 resourceful with getting what you need.
Right. Tell us about your last conversation with him.
Okay. One other thing, he did finally go to rehab. He ended up his summer being arrested twice in 5 days, and he did go to rehab for 28 days, which is a joke. And then he did go to a sober house for about 7 weeks. Mm-hmm. And, then he came home after refusing to take a drug test. Mm-hmm. So, our last conversation, that day, he worked a temp job. He looked the best he had looked in ages. And we thought, wow, we got him back, and he asked to borrow the car to go to the mall. And, we thought we were so smart. We had a tracking device in his car that he couldn't really drive to Patterson and do anything that, would jeopardize how he was doing. And he came home about 45 minutes later, and I remember we were watching TV, and he poked his head, and I said, B, it's so nice to have you back. He goes, thanks, Mom, I love you. He goes, thanks for giving me another chance. And I look at his eyes and I was like, oh my God, he's high. Like, how did that happen? And so the screaming, the yelling, I call it the war zone your house becomes when you're living with somebody who's an addict. And, we went to sleep, and my husband woke up at about 1 o'clock in the morning and found him laying across his bed, barely breathing. And he was revived with Narcan and walked out the front door. And, we were in the emergency room until about 1:30 that afternoon was when we got back. And I remember being so incredibly angry with him. And, I said, go take a shower. And he said, I can't, and I, after the fact, learned that it hurts to shower, it hurts to shave, it hurts to brush your teeth. And we talked to him, and we, explained what had happened. I still don't think he really thought he overdosed. And my husband said, you got a second chance. And, that was probably about 2:30. And a little before 3:30, his brother came home and said, where's B? And I said, he's upstairs, kneeling next to his bed. And he went upstairs and screamed. And that's when we found him.
So he had just gotten out of the hospital after being revived with Narcan.
He was home 2 hours. Mm-hmm.
And then that was the fatal overdose.
He had used again. We didn't know at the time until after we got the autopsy back, but he, despite telling us he didn't have anything, I think the withdrawals were so bad, and he, probably knew he was going into rehab the next day, and so he overdosed again.